of course, also are tracking and monitoring a large area in the northern Gulf, expected to bring with it some heavy rain to Florida and possibly tropical development. But that's not all for the Atlantic. We're also tracking multiple tropical waves, indicating that the next big storm system perhaps not too far away. We want to check in live with Fox Weather hurricane specialist Bryan Norcross, joining us live this morning with all of his insights. I appreciate it every single time you're on. Bryan, good morning to you. Your latest thoughts on what the National Hurricane Center is thinking toward the northern Gulf of America.
Hey, good morning, Michael, and good morning, everyone. Yes, we're watching the northern part of the Gulf. The computer models indicate a slight chance of some kind of development there, a very, very good chance of very heavy rain over Florida. So those two things don't necessarily go together, that you need some kind of developed tropical system to get the heavy rain. And the odds of it turning into at least a tropical depression are only 20% at this point, which coincides with the various computer models, and there is no cohesive track or anything else about them. It's kind of a scattered approach. It's somewhere up in there. There's a chance of at least a tropical depression developing. This is the system we're talking about. It's just really in the middle levels of the atmosphere now. It's not at the surface like you would normally track a low pressure system at this point, but we're going to go through what the models are showing about this. What it started out as there you see the cluster off of the Carolinas, it started related to a front. Now, the main low pressure system was way up here off the Delmarva Peninsula and moving away from shore. And there you see all the bad weather with that. And then the front extended down, and this is the tail end of that front. And when we look here, we can kind of make out a dip right in there like that. And that dip is an indication of low pressure kind of trying to develop in this location right there. So that's what we're going to track. But as I said, the surface thing, the low pressure at the surface that we would normally track is way up here, and it's moving away. And this is separating off, kind of breaking off down here. And the only thing we really have to track right now is in the middle levels of the atmosphere. So let's do that. We put the X there where the kind of center of sort of rotation is, the middle of the disturbance there. And you can see there's a cluster of moisture. The dark green, that's where the strongest moisture is. And then there's high pressure here off to the west. So here's how it's going to evolve. And just watch up here and you'll see the time. We start today. Now we're going to go through today and then through tomorrow. And watch as this thing kind of sinks to the south toward Florida. And look where the moisture ends up here. So we have this big pool of moisture right over the peninsula part of Florida. The forecast is for a 2 out of 4 chance of excessive rainfall in the southern 2/3 of the peninsula. We'll look at that in more detail in a second. But in any case, starting tomorrow, excessive rainfall will likely fall in Florida in some areas. And look, this is not going to move quickly as it moves on across the peninsula, ends up in the Gulf of America here. And here you see the flow in, the tropical flow in, and we still end up with this big pool of moisture here, a lot of over Florida. And this is where we have some chance in that Tuesday to Wednesday time frame that some kind of low pressure spins up here. There's no indication it would ever get very strong, but it might just even gather more moisture. So we have the potential for flash flooding and other issues with heavy rain. So here we are Wednesday morning. Now watch as we go forward in time. We get to Thursday. It ends up somewhere up on the Gulf Coast. And look at the tremendous amount of moisture here. The Gulf Coast and Florida starts to dry out on Thursday. So it's pulling all this tropical moisture with it. So essentially what's happening is the disturbance breaks off from the old front and then starts gathering moisture, moves across Florida, and we get at least 2 days of very heavy rain, probably well into Wednesday as well across the peninsula. So here's what the current projection is for rain. And I say current because this thing is all very developing, very much in the developing stages now. So you can see where the yellows are, kind of the lower 2/3 of the peninsula, especially the bottom half of the peninsula, including southeast Florida, southwest Florida, and just south of the I-4 corridor there, for very heavy rain. Some isolated areas up to 6 inches is the current forecast. And then moving west as we go through the week and and no doubt those forecasts will expand Thursday into Friday and so forth. This forecast only taking you through Thursday. So we'll watch this develop. Again, very little concern to no concern for something strong, but something very wet is very, very likely here with this system. All right, out in the Atlantic, we still have the dust coming in surges here, and it comes in surges related to tropical waves, tropical disturbances moving off of Africa. So that's going to continue. We get everyone kind of brings another surge on across. Here they are into the Caribbean. And with the cooler waters out in the Atlantic over by Africa, this is just going to slow down anything developing. So nothing is expected to develop in the tropics. If something develops, it's up here related to this old front up in here as we were talking about. But the tropics still look shut down for the foreseeable future, at least until about the first of the month, it looks like. And even then, the long-range signals we have are not for anything obvious in terms of development. Just we might get a little more conducive general atmospheric pattern about that time. But normally August is when tropical season starts up, and this looks like it's going to be kind of one of those more average seasons as opposed to the seasons we've seen lately. Guys?
Yeah, Brian, thanks for that. As you just mentioned, I feel like August is really the time frame that a lot of folks really zone in on what's going to be going on in the tropical Atlantic. So certainly a lot to look forward to there as we near the end of July and into early August. Fox Weather Hurricane Specialist Bryan Norcross. Bryan, as always, thank you for your insight. We appreciate that.